Every morning in the Psukim de Zimra, these are the introductory verses before we start the blessings of the Shema. We cite a verse and we say, Atu Hashem Elokim asher b'charta v'Avraham. You are the God who has chosen Avraham, v'otzeso miur Kasdim, and you took him out of the kiln of Kasdim, v'samta shema Avraham, and you placed his name to be Avraham. Meaning, you are the God who had chosen Avraham and had taken him out of the kiln of Kasdim, v'samta shema Avraham, and you placed his name, you designated his name to be Avraham, and you found his heart to be faithful before you. It's a verse in Prophets. So why did Avraham merit to transition from Avraham to Avraham? Because he went into the kiln to die, not to bow to the idol. God performed the miracle, and due to Avraham's self-sacrifice to sanctify God's name, not to bow to idolatry, God took him out to designate him as Avraham, to be Avraham. When Avraham went into the kiln, he was only 75 years old. He became Avraham. He had the name change at the age of 99 when he was circumcised. But nevertheless, the dynamic for that transition began at the age of 75. When he was taken out of the kiln, he already was designated to be ultimately Avraham. To be the person, we said the numerical value of Avraham is 248, which corresponds to every aspect of his being, that his whole being was spiritualized, that he had full control over every aspect of his being. That happened at 99 because of what he had done to give his life to go into the kiln. And when he was taken out, the trajectory was set for 99 to become Avraham. We had spoken extensively of this. What is the hay of Avraham? Avraham became a new entity of existence. Avraham's existence, as God said, as I created the world with the spirituality with letter Hey, when I add the name Hey to your name, you become the equivalent of all existence. What it took to bring about all existence in the physical sense, that's what it will take to bring about you to be that other being, to be able to address the objective of creation, to meet all the challenges of creation, which initially was meant to be met by Adam before he ate of the tree of knowledge. That is Avraham. So Avraham is the new being, the new creation. And why did he merit ultimately to be on this path for that transition? Because he wanted to kill to die on behalf of God. So here's the question. If a person gives his life to sanctify God's name, it's the ultimate level of accomplishment. There's nothing more precious to a person than his own life. And if you're willing even to give what's more precious, the most precious to a person on behalf of God, that is the ultimate sacrifice. You give your life for God. In Hebrew, it's referred to as Kiddush Hashem. It's the sanctification of God's name. So because Avraham, although he was a Noahide, he gave his life to sanctify God's name, the trajectory to become the new being, the new creation was set, and it crystallized at the age of 99 when he became Avraham. And that's when he was circumcised. That's when the foreskin was taken off, which was an expression of the evil of the tree of knowledge, which we discussed. But why did Avraham just perish in the kiln and merit at that moment his special place in the world to come, to have that special relation with God? In the world to come, but yet God intervened and took him out of that kiln. The question is why. So there's an interesting midrash. There's a midrash in this week's parsha portion. The Torah tells us these are the chronicles of Yitzhak, the son of Avraham. Yitzhak was the son of Avraham, and then the verse says, and Avraham fathered Yitzhak. So the obvious question is, if Yitzchak's the son of Avraham, it's obvious that Avraham fathered Yitzchak. Seemingly totally superfluous. So the Midrash answers, cites a verse in Mishlei, in Proverbs. King Solomon says, Ateres Zekanim b'nei bonim. The crown of the elders are the grandchildren. The crown of the elders are the grandchildren. You have a person, could you imagine, a grandfather and his grandson wins the Nobel Prize in medicine to discover the medication to heal all cancers. One drug, all cancers are healed. The grandfather is what is glorified due to his grandson's accomplishment. It's unheard of. So the crown of the grandfather is his grandson. And he travels specially to Sweden. He sits on the dais, and when they put that noose around his grandson's neck with the big medallion that weighs him down, that he has to go to a chiropractor because he actually loosened a vertebrae in his spine, the grandfather has tremendous joy and nachas from this. That's nachas. But King Solomon says, what is the crown of the grandchildren or the crown of the grandparents? V'tiferes bonim avosam, and the glory of the children are their parents. The grandparents are glorified through their grandchildren. And the children, the crown of the grandparents are their grandchildren. But the glory of the children are who their parents are, who they are. What does this mean? Hatzadikim, the devoutly righteous, misatrin b'vnei v'neim. They are crowned through the sons of their sons. U'b'neim, and their children, misatrin b'avosam. The children are crowned with the crown due to their parents. Keita, what does this mean? Avram nisater b'schus Yaakov. Avram was crowned due to his grandson Yaakov, in the merit of Yaakov. Listen to this. When Nimrod, who was the king, who had given Avram the ultimatum, either bow or go into the kiln. When he threw him into the kiln because Avram would not bow, God immediately descended to save him from the kiln, that he should not be incinerated. He should not be turned into ash. Amru Malach Ashores. So the angels come to God and say, Ribbono shel olam, Master of the universe, L'zeh tomatzil, you're going to save this individual. Kama rishonim asidim lamod mimenu. How many evil people will descend from this man? Why are you saving him? Amar lahen HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So God responded to the angels. He said to them, Bishul Yaakov ben Beno, I'm saving him in the merit of Yaakov, his grandson. Sh'osed labod mimenu, who's going to descend from him. Ani matzilo, I'm saving him in the merit of his grandson Yaakov. Meaning, despite all the evil people, it's all irrelevant. Because in terms of the value of Yaakov, he will vanquish all that. He will be the counterforce against all that. And how do we know that Avraham was saved in the merit of Yaakov? Cites a verse in Yeshayahu. in Isaiah. L'chein komer Hashem el beis Yaakov. This is what Hashem said to the household of Yaakov. Asher podo es Avraham. The house of Yaakov redeemed Avraham. These are the words of Isaiah the prophet. Podo min akivshan. Where do we find that Yaakov redeemed Avraham? He redeemed them from the kiln. Hari nisatru. So here we see nisatru avos b'shul bonim, that the grandparents were crowned due to the future grandson that will be born. Now let's understand something. If there wasn't meant to be a Yaakov who's coming down in the future to be a future descendant, there'd be no reason to save Avraham. Why? As the angel said, you mean you're going to save this man where all these evil people will descend from him? What does Hashem say? What does God respond? He's going to have a son, Yaakov. And that son, Yaakov, will deal with all those issues. He will bring about my glory. He will be the father of the chosen people. He will father the 12 tribes, who ultimately will stand at Sinai and accept my Torah unequivocally, which is the objective of creation. Now, comes out interesting. So why was Avram, why did he merit the transition to go from Avraham to Avraham? As we said, the prophet says, you are God who had taken Avram out of the kiln and you designated him to be Avraham. Why was he designated to be Avraham? Why did he become a new creation? Why? As we said, the hay connotes, that is the spiritual energy created the whole world. Why did Avram merit that transition at the age of 99? It's because he came out of the kiln. But why did he come out of the kiln? Because ultimately, a grandson of Yaakov had to be born. And who's Yaakov? Yaakov is the person who will father the Jewish people, which will have that intimate relation with God. And if that evil is part of us, meaning if we still carry that putrefied aspect of the tree of knowledge, there is no relation with God. So the only reason why Avram was recreated to be this new spiritual entity called Avraham, which is numerically 248, is because of who? Because Yaakov ultimately had to be born, and who's Yaakov? Yaakov was the one who fought the angel, who became Yisrael. He lorded over man and God, the angel. And he merited to be Yisrael. And Yisrael was given the Torah at Sinai. But why was Yisrael given the Torah at Sinai? Because we were not part of that original creation, which was putrefied with the tree of knowledge, the evil of the tree of knowledge. So Avram merited to become a new creation due to who? Due to Yaakov. In reality, he chose to go into the kiln, but he didn't have to come out of the kiln. If it would have ended there, the world would have continued as a putrefied world due to the sin of Adam. So why was there a place for the new man? There's a new classification of Adam. Who took a place of the original Adam, who was Adam before the tree of knowledge? The Jewish people. When did that happen? When did that process begin? When Avram became Avraham. Because that was a new entity, that was a new creation. And what merit did he become Avram? Because he went into the kiln. But the question is, why did he come out of the kiln? He came out of the kiln because of Yaakov. And that's what Isaiah says. The house of Jacob redeemed Avraham. What did he redeem them? He redeemed them from the kiln. So now it's interesting. We had mentioned a few weeks ago, in the Amidah we say, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Avram was the location of the divine presence in this world on the terrestrial level. Since the sin of Adam, God was not on the terrestrial level. The first time God came to the terrestrial level was Avraham. Avraham was the location of the divine presence when? After he was circumcised. After he was circumcised, now he is Adam. He's the equivalent of Adam before the sin. But why was he able to become Adam, the equivalent of Adam before the sin? Because he went to the kiln. But he went to kill the age of 75. Why did he come out of the kiln? To be able to develop and advance to 99. Do you know why? Because there had to be a Yaakov. Because Avraham had to father a Yitzchak, and Yitzchak had a father, a Yaakov. And Yaakov, being the most special of the patriarchs, merited to father the Jewish people. So it's very good. Why do we say Elokei Avraham? This is the Eschol of Goy Godel. I will bless you. We say Elokei Yitzchak. Agad L'Shmecha, I will give you great renown. We say Elokei Yaakov. Maybe you would think when you conclude the bracha, first bracha in the Amida, you would conclude Mogein, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, because each of them was the location for the divine presence. We conclude Baruch to Hashem, Mogein, Avraham. So we explain why Avraham. Each of them were the location for the divine presence. So we explain because Avraham is the one who went into the kiln, and due to that level of sacrifice, he became Avraham, as the prophet says. You would take him out of the kiln to become Avraham. Therefore, we conclude Mogen Avraham. That's how we explained it. But now it's not so simple. If we're saying that the only merit that Avraham came out of the kiln was the merit of Yaakov, because Yaakov had to be born, because Yaakov is the father of the 12 tribes, which ultimately were the Jews who stood at Sinai, who were Bnei Yisrael, who said Nasa b'nishma, who accepted Torah unequivocally. Maybe we should conclude Mogen Yaakov. The answer is, doesn't make a difference. It's true. What the Torah is revealing to me, although the only reason why he was saved was in the merit of Yaakov, and that's how the grandparents are crowned by their grandchildren. But if not for Avram's self-sacrifice to give his life, there was nothing to come out for, because he would have never gone in. He went in not to come out. Because of that, he merited to have a grandson. And only because of that grandson did God perform the miracle to take him out. Because despite all the evil who will descend from Avram, nevertheless, Yaakov is a dimension of spirituality that he's able to counter whatever that evil is, and ultimately, at the end of time, to vanquish that evil. And where do we see that children are crowned in the merit of the parents? So Avram came out of the kiln because of Yaakov, as we just explained. And where do we see that the children or the grandchildren wear the crown of their grandparents? The Torah tells us a story. Yaakov fled from the clutches of Esav because he had taken the birthright. And his mother instructed him and his father to go to his uncle Lavan, and there he will find a wife. He spent 20 years there. He worked 14 years for the two wives, for Rachel and Leah, and then he had their concubines, the maidservants. So the 12 tribes were fathered from these 4 women. 2 were matriarchs, the other 2 were concubines. And then he worked 6 years to earn his wealth. After being there 20 years, God says to Yaakov, it's time to leave. It's time to return. and he fled without informing his father-in-law that he's leaving. When Lavan had heard what happened, he was livid and he vowed to kill Yaakov and his family, because he felt that as long as Yaakov is in his clutches, his value of spirituality is meaningless, has nothing. But if he returns to Canaan with his family, to the Holy Land, that will blossom and create an unlimited power, which is uncontainable. And Lavan did whatever he can to suppress that, to undermine that. All of a sudden, his son-in-law seems to be this simple, naive, pure person, connives him, which he never believed he could be out-connived. Lavan, he was the ultimate conniver. He's livid, he's incensed. And he takes his family, his sons, and they chase Yaakov, chase after him. More than the word pursue. God comes to Lavan in a dream and says to him, I don't want you to touch Yaakov. If you know what's good for you, lay off, as they say. Don't do good or evil to him. Let him be. And when Lavan meets up with Yaakov, he says, the truth is, I could have killed you. But I didn't because your God did not allow me. This is the level of arrogance. I mean, the man gave his life for 20 years for him. And marries his daughters and his grandchildren. I would kill all of you. And this is what we say when we bring the new fruits. We make a declaration of appreciation to God. Arami Ovei Dovi. The Aramean Lavan would have destroyed our forefather, if not for God's intervention, not allowing it. And whose merit was Yaakov saved? So the Midrash quotes a pasuk, a verse. Yaakov says to Lavan, Lule Elokei Avi Elokei Avraham. If not for the God of my father, Elokei Avraham, the God of Avraham, you would have cheated me. I'd leave, I'd have nothing. The only reason why I was able to succeed and accomplish what I have was only due to Elokei Avraham. So what is Yaakov attributing all the successes and his level of accomplishment to? Elokei Avraham, the God of Avraham. Because Avraham was the location of God's presence in this world, and his merit, that's why I was able to leave this location alive. Not only alive, with tremendous accomplishment. A family that a future of Jewish people with wealth. So that's the example how the children, they are coordinated or crowned by their grandparents or by their parents. So it works both ways. Avraham only came out of the kiln because there had to be that special person, Yaakov, who would contend with all the evil of the world. And Yaakov only survived the pursuit of Lavan in the merit of Avraham. Otherwise, he wouldn't have survived. So it works both ways. And that's reality. There was a question. There were 6 million Jews who perished, who were murdered in the Holocaust by the Nazis. Yimach Shmam v'Zichram, that name should be obliterated forever. And there were survivors. And the question is asked, and even the survivors had this question. Many of the people who perished, 1 million children, innocent children, people are holy people, devout, holy, a lot more holy than any of the survivors. Why did they perish, and why did the survivors survive? It's not, and they had tremendous guilt. Why did we deserve to survive, and our parents, grandparents, all those holy people, why did they perish in the Holocaust? So the answer given is that it had nothing to do with their merit. The reason why they survived was that because they had a purpose. And because of who they were, nothing to do with their levels of accomplishment. In terms, they had a mission. And because they had that mission, God protected them from the attribute of justice that they should not perish in the Holocaust. Now, why were they given that mission? To reestablish a new Jewish people since the Holocaust. The Torah that exists, the spirituality that was reinstated, which was nearly eradicated. Why? It's true, they had that mission, but why were they given that mission? Do you know why? Because these people had those special antecedents. They pride themselves in the merit of their grandparents. The only reason why they were given this mission, they had that ability to succeed in that mission, was in the merit of their forefathers. Those Jews who gave their lives were murdered because they were Hasidim, devoutly pious. And the Kiddush Hashem was even greater. And the tragedy was greater. Therefore, their children and grandchildren merited to be given this mission to reestablish God's presence in this world. That's an example of that the children, who are they coordinated by? Through who are they crowned? Through who are they endowed? The endowment comes due to their grandparents. So it works both ways. The example is Yaakov, especially as he was, he told Lavan that the reason why you couldn't touch me is because Elokei Avraham Avi, in the merit, the God of my grandfather Avraham, there Yaakov is priding himself and giving all the credit to Avraham, and that's why he's able to continue and ultimately arrive at Sinai with his descendants.